The night before Christmas, flashing lights pierced the darkness of a Modesto, California neighborhood. Not the festive glow of holiday cheer, but the unsettling flash of police lights. While other homes were filled with joy, a tense search was underway for an expectant mother who had vanished that morning.
Lacy was last seen by her husband, Scott.
Police state he has cooperated to an extent. Now, what did they mean by that?
Scott, what about the allegations of a girlfriend?
Scott told me he was not married. We did have a romantic relationship.
That Christmas, Scott Peterson's prediction of spending the holiday alone came true.
You came to me earlier in December and told me that you had lost your wife. What was that about?
His wife Lacy was gone, and months later, her body and the remains of their unborn son would be found just miles from where her husband claimed to be fishing that morning. Or was he golfing?
That was a morning decision. It's either go play golf at the club or go fishing.
He would be arrested days later near the California-Mexico border, well over 400 miles away from home, with a suspicious new look. What began as a months-long search for a missing housewife would soon turn into one of the most polarizing convictions in American history.
The jury in the above entitled cause, former defendant Laci Peterson guilty.
I don't think they proved it then. I don't think they proved it in any time since then.
For over 2 decades, Scott has maintained his innocence, insisting that the real killer is still out there. As Scott's days slip away behind bars, will the truth of what happened to Lacy that morning ever come to light? Welcome to the Vacant Mind. Today, we're taking a look at the conviction of Scott Peterson in the deaths of his wife Lacy and their unborn son Connor. We'll go over the timeline leading up to Lacy's disappearance, what happened afterward, and dive into the latest developments on Scott's current fight in court. But first, let's talk about Lacy's background. Lacy Denise Rocha was born on May 4th, 1975, to her parents, Sharon and Dennis Rocha, in Modesto, California. When she was a child, her family moved to Escalon, California, a small city just north of Modesto, where they owned a dairy farm. During this time, Lacy liked to help out on the farm, alongside other activities, like gardening. When she was still young, her parents divorced, with her mother moving Lacy and her older brother Brent back to Modesto. In middle school, Lacy joined the cheerleading team, a passion she would carry into her years at Thomas Downey High School. After graduating in 1993, Lacy attended Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, where she majored in ornamental horticulture. During her time in college, Lacy would sometimes stop by the Pacific Cafe in Morro Bay to visit a friend who worked there. It was at that same restaurant that another employee by the name of Scott Peterson would catch her eye.
Describe Scott Peterson.
Just a really kind, sweet little guy.
Never in trouble of any kind.
He was too good to believe.
Lacy would tell her mother that she had just met the man she would marry after one of their first encounters, a prediction that would come true in the following years. But at the start, she gave Scott her number, and he called her. Soon after, they started dating. Scott had dreams of becoming a professional golfer, but as the relationship became more serious, he put his goals to the side. Instead, he would decide to pursue a career in agricultural business. After 2 years of dating, Lacy and Scott moved in with each other. They got married in 1997 after Lacy graduated and as Scott prepared for his last year of college. After Scott finished school the following year, he and Lacy opened up a sports bar called The Shack in San Luis Obispo. However, the business wouldn't stay in the family for very long. The couple would sell the restaurant, making the move to Modesto in October of 2000 to start their family. Lacy began working as a part-time substitute teacher, while Scott began his new job at the newly founded American branch of a European fertilizer company. In 2002, Lacy was overjoyed to learn that she was pregnant with the couple's first child, a son who they planned to name Connor.
They tried for a long time to have a baby, and she finally became pregnant, and this is just the center of her world, just to have her baby and be with her husband.
But Lacy would never get to meet her son, as prosecutors say Scott had already set a plan into motion to get rid of his pregnant wife. On December 9th, Scott suddenly bought a boat despite the financial issues the couple had been dealing with.
I asked him, when did you buy the boat? His answer to that question was, it was a surprise for Rod. He didn't tell me when he bought it. It was a surprise for Rod, which made no sense at all, of course.
On December 23rd, Scott bought a 2-day fishing license. It was the first he had bought since 1994. At 5:45 p.m. on December 23rd, Lacy and Scott stopped by Salon, where her sister Amy would cut his hair. Scott offered to pick up a fruit basket for Amy the next day that she had ordered from a local business. He explained that he'd be playing golf at a course near the business on Christmas Eve, so he could easily swing by and make the pickup. At 8:30 p.m., Lacy would talk to her mother Sharon on the phone. It'd be the last time Sharon would ever speak to her daughter.
She was fine. She called to tell me they would be over for dinner the following evening, Christmas Eve, and we were looking forward to it.
Around 9:30 a.m. on December 24th, Scott claims he left Lacy at home to go fishing for sturgeon at the Berkeley Marina, which was about 90 miles away. There, he would fish for less than an hour. He had told people he was planning on golfing that morning, but changed his mind last minute.
It seemed too cold to go play golf at the club, so.
Scott's timeline would come into question, though, when an investigator testified that cell phone records placed Scott at home at 10:08 a.m. He told police that Lacy was watching a segment about making meringue on the Martha Stewart show, as she got ready to do housework, bake cookies, and walk their dog, a golden retriever named Mackenzie.
Lacy was last seen by her husband Scott when she was walking her dog possibly in the area of East Loloma Park, Dry Creek.
At around 10:28 a.m., a neighbor of the couple says she found Mackenzie roaming by himself outside of the home, so she returned him to the Petersons' backyard. There was no sign of Lacy. At 2:15 p.m., Scott would call Lacy on their home phone line from his cell phone, but she didn't answer. He left her a voicemail, saying,
"Hey, beautiful. I just left a message at home. 2:15. I live in Berkeley. I won't be able to get to Villa Farms to get that basket for Papa. I was hoping you would get this message and go on out there. I'll see you in a bit, sweetie. Love you. Bye."
End of message.
But he claims when he got home around 4:30 p.m., Lacy was nowhere to be found. He would take a shower, eat some pizza, and wash his clothes, going next door to ask his neighbor about Lacy at some point. Scott also called Lacy's mother, Sharon, to ask if she had seen her daughter. When Sharon said she hadn't heard from Lacy, her concern quickly grew. Around 5:15 p.m., Lacy's stepfather, Ron, would call the police to report Lacy missing.
How can I help you?
Yes, my son-in-law called. He went playing golf this morning at 9:30. My daughter's been missing since this morning. She's 8 months pregnant. She took her dog for a walk in the park. The dog came home with just a leash on.
So the dog came back without your daughter?
Right.
What time did she leave the house and didn't come back?
That we don't know. We just got a call from our son-in-law. Said he left this morning at 9:30 to play golf. He just got home about a half hour ago. Nowhere around.
And she's 8 months pregnant, you said?
Pardon?
You said she's 8 months pregnant?
Yes, ma'am.
Lacy's loved ones began to gather at the Petersons' home that night, noting that Scott claimed to have been golfing when his wife went missing, making no mention of his trip to the marina.
So that was a morning decision, is either go play golf at the club or go fishing.
Okay. So what you're telling me, Scott, is you have no idea where this is.
Laci Denise Peterson is 8 months pregnant, and she's considered a high-risk missing person under suspicious circumstances.
As the hours wore on into the evening with no sign of Lacy, prosecutors say Scott had someone else on his mind. A woman by the name of Amber Frey. Amber was a massage therapist in Fresno, a city about an hour-and-a-half drive away from the Petersons' home in Modesto. Scott would talk to Amber for about 18 minutes that night, making no mention of his missing wife. But that's because he had already told Amber that Lacy was dead, having portrayed himself as a grieving widower when he began the affair. But we'll discuss that more later. On December 25th, or Christmas Day, a team of almost 1,000 volunteers, made up of Lacy's family, friends, and neighbors, joined police in a massive search around the Modesto area.
We'll go door to door, we'll search the area, we hand out flyers, we're doing everything we know, everything we can.
No solid leads.
No, there's nothing new.
Investigators said Scott showed little interest in the search. 2 days later, on December 27th, Detective Henry Dodge Hendy would search Scott's warehouse, noting several things that seemed out of place. Dodge would find cement powder on the cover for Scott's boat trailer, along with 5 marks that matched the shape and size of a bucket. Investigators believe Scott had used the cement to make 5 anchors, but only one was found at the warehouse. On December 28th, just 4 days after Lacy was reported missing, investigators turned their attention to the Berkeley Marina, the same place Scott said he went fishing that morning.
Mr. Peterson continued cooperating?
He's continued to cooperate to some degree, yes.
Jackie Peterson is his mom. I heard police state he has cooperated to an extent. Now, what did they mean by that, to an extent?
We don't know. We don't know what they mean.
How come nobody saw you at the Berkeley Marina and nobody saw Lacy walking the dog, huh?
As a media circus erupted outside the Petersons' home, Scott appeared noticeably calm and composed in on-camera interviews about his wife's disappearance.
We all want her back home. She knows how much she's loved, how much she's missed.
On December 30th, Amber Frey would come forward to Modesto police, revealing that she had been dating Scott. The affair had begun shortly after Scott met Amber on November 20th at the Elephant Bar in Fresno. They spent the night together at a local hotel.
Scott told me he was not married. We did have a romantic relationship.
She told investigators that on December 9th, Scott had claimed to have recently lost his wife, and this would be the first Christmas he would spend without her.
And he was crying at that point. I took it as she died. Didn't know how. I didn't pry to ask. He just said it was painful. So I had asked if he was ready for a relationship, and he said yes. When I discovered he was involved in the Laci Peterson disappearance case, I immediately contacted the Modesto Police Department.
Detectives would ask Amber to keep speaking with Scott, giving her a device to record their phone calls. Law enforcement hoped Scott would slip up and reveal details about his wife's disappearance. On December 31st, Lacy's loved ones in the community gathered for a candlelight vigil at East La Loma Park, where she would often take Mackenzie on their walks.
I just want to thank everybody for coming out here tonight. Lacy would be so happy to see she had so many friends and supporters. And just keep looking for Lacy. Please don't give up.
We've taken a lot of strength from all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. I love you all. I want to meet everybody. I want to meet you all.
As family members spoke throughout the evening, attendees say one person was noticeably missing.
They asked about the candlelight vigil that we held in the park. And they asked, why weren't you on that stage with the family? And frankly, because this isn't about us to be out in front of the camera. It's about us to work towards bringing home the one person who's hurting the most, the piece of our family that's missing right now.
At 4:18 p.m., Scott called Amber during the vigil for his missing wife, claiming to be calling from the Eiffel Tower in Paris.
Amber, Amber. Amber. I can hear you. Amber, if you can hear me, it's New Year's. I know. I can hear you. Amber, it's New Year's here. Are you there? Yes. Having a good time? Amber. Hey, Happy New Year's. Happy New Year's. I wanted to call you. Thank you. Amber, are you there? I'm here. Amber. I wish you could hear me. I'm on the, I think that you're there. I'm near the Eiffel Tower. New Year's celebration is unreal. The crowd is huge. The crowd's huge? Amber. Yes, I'm here. Amber, you're there. I can't hear you right now, but I'll call you on your New Year's. Okay, I'll hear from you then. Amber. Amber, miss you. I'll see you soon. Okay. I hope.
As 2002 drew to a close, search efforts for Lacy would continue into the new year, creeping closer each day to the expectant mother's due date of February 10th. On January 6th, Scott would come clean to Amber about his trip to Paris, revealing he had actually been searching for his missing wife.
She disappeared just before Christmas. For the past 2 weeks, I've been in Modesto with her family and mine, searching for her. Scott? And I can't tell you more because I need you to be protected from the media. You came to me earlier in December and told me that you had lost your wife. What was that about? She's alive. What? She's alive. Where? She's alive? Where? In Modesto. Now, I know, this is the hardest. I wanted to tell you first, you need to protect yourself from the media. Okay. The media has been telling everyone that I had something to do with her disappearance. So where is she? That's what we are trying to find out. It's a nationwide search. Okay, so again, you never answered my question. Why did you tell me it would be the first holidays without her? I can't. I can't explain any more now.
On January 15th, investigators told Lacy's loved ones about Scott's affair with Amber.
Scott, why don't you answer some questions?
Scott, just Around this time, police placed GPS trackers on several vehicles that Scott was known to use.
Police have said repeatedly over the past weeks that they have not ruled you out as a suspect.
Right.
Have they told you why they haven't ruled you out as a suspect?
My indications are that, you can't rule someone out as a suspect until there's some resolution to the case.
That spring, the months-long search for Lacy and Connor came to a tragic end. On April 13th, 2003, Connor's body was found by a couple walking their dog along the San Francisco Bay. It was believed he had been in the water for only a couple of days. The next day, a jogger spotted Lacy's torso and leg a mile away, lodged in a concrete riprap at the Richmond Inner Harbor. The rest of her body was never recovered. It was estimated that Lacy's remains had been in the water for months. Investigators determined Connor had died in utero after Lacy's death. The pathologist testified that Connor's body had been protected in the womb for at least part of the time that Lacy had been submerged. On April 18, 2003, Scott was arrested at the Torrey Pines golf course in La Jolla, just a 20-minute drive from San Diego. Detectives had tracked him there using the GPS placed on his vehicle. Scott, who says he was there to meet his brother and his father Lee for a round of golf, had dyed his hair and goatee blonde. He was driving a maroon 1984 Mercedes that he had purchased for $3,600 in cash under the name Jacqueline Peterson, his mother's name. Inside Scott's vehicle, investigators discovered nearly $15,000 in cash, camping and survival gear, clothing, and 4 cell phones. They also found 2 driver's licenses, one for Scott and another for his brother. Lee explained that Scott had used his brother's ID to get a discount for San Diego residents at the golf course. Lee told authorities that Scott had been living out of his vehicle to escape the constant media harassment.
I would appreciate it. I know there's some volunteers behind all of you. If you could allow them.
Media, if you could just spread to the side a little bit so volunteers could please get through, we'd really appreciate it.
However, investigators argued that Scott had disguised himself in an attempt to flee to Mexico and evade justice back home. On April 21st, Scott pled not guilty in the Stanislaus County Superior Court to charges related to Lacy and Connor's deaths. Concerns arose about Scott's fate being put up to a jury in Stanislaus County, as so many people were familiar with the high-profile case. To ensure a fair trial, the judge moved the case to San Mateo County, away from the Bay Area's heavy media coverage and potential jury bias. The trial began on June 1st, 2004, with Mark Garagos, also representing Michael Jackson at the time, leading the defense to prove Scott's innocence. The trial stretched 5 months, with over 180 witnesses. Prosecutor Rick DeStaso highlighted Scott's multiple affairs, his desire not to be a father, and the mounting $20,000 in credit card debt. DeStaso theorized that Scott strangled Lacy before using 4 of the cement anchors from his warehouse to sink her body in the bay. The limited evidence presented in court included a pair of pliers with a strand of Lacy's hair on them investigators found in Scott's boat. A police dog also picked up Lacy's scent at the boat ramp Scott had used that day. In response, the Garagos argued that Scott wouldn't have killed Lacy over his affair with Amber, who he had only seen 4 times. Garagos highlighted several inconsistencies in the police investigation, including the claim that Scott lied about Lacy watching a Martha Stewart episode on Meringue the morning she went missing. Investigators had questioned Scott's story after finding no mention of Meringue in the episode. Garagos played the episode for the jury, proving the sweet treat was indeed discussed.
Ooh, you want to make little meringues? Oh, that would be nice.
Since DNA or any other hard evidence was not recovered in the case, prosecutors relied on Scott's suspicious behavior and his relaxed attitude about Lacy's disappearance to argue his guilt. The defense would also point out the lack of evidence tying Scott to the case, saying that Lacy could have been kidnapped by someone else. On December 12, 2004, Scott was convicted on all charges.
Soon after Lacy went missing, I made a promise to her that if she has been harmed, we will seek justice for her and Connor and make sure that that person responsible for their deaths will be punished.
The judge sentenced him to death by lethal injection on December 13th.
Outside court, Sharon Mocha was composed, but in the courtroom, she unleashed a scathing attack on the man she used to consider a son. She called Scott Peterson a selfish, heartless, spoiled, self-centered coward. Scott's parents never heard Sharon speak. They left after shouting at the first speaker, Lacy's brother Brent Rocha, who told Scott that he was an arrogant, spoiled rich kid and a loser.
Guess what, Scotty?
San Quentin's your new home. Since his conviction, Scott's battles in court have been relentless. Over the years, his defense team has filed multiple appeals, each aiming to overturn his conviction.
I don't think they proved it then. I don't think they proved it in any time since then. I think he was convicted because of what I used to call the he didn't act right evidence.
In 2012, they argued that media coverage during the trial had tainted the jury, making it impossible for Peterson to get a fair trial. The courts rejected that claim, and the conviction stood. In 2014, another attempt was made, this time challenging the fairness of a juror who was allegedly biased. Once again, the courts upheld the conviction, but Peterson's team pressed on. In 2020, the California Supreme Court overturned his death sentence, ruling that jurors opposed to capital punishment were wrongfully dismissed. In 2021, he was resentenced to life without parole. In 2022, a judge denied a petition claiming jury selection was tainted by a juror's undisclosed history of domestic abuse. In 2024, the Los Angeles Innocence Project took on his case, uncovering new evidence they claimed could exonerate him.
The defense was entitled to those at the time of trial. Mr. Peterson has been waiting 20 years to find some of these police reports that should have been provided.
Their petition, filed in April 2025, includes witness statements suggesting that Lacy was seen alive after Scott left for his fishing trip, and evidence of a burglary across the street from the Petersons' home. The break-in was believed to have taken place around the time Lacy went missing. Adding to their argument, Peterson's attorneys highlighted a burned-out van discovered on December 25, 2002 in Modesto's airport district, less than a mile away from the Petersons' home. Inside the van, investigators found a mattress that appeared to have bloodstains. Peterson's defense proposed that Lacy might have been abducted and transported in the van after stumbling upon the burglary. However, prior testing in 2019 did not confirm the presence of blood on the mattress. In 2024, a judge denied the defense's request for new DNA testing on the mattress, stating that there was no new technology that would change the results. In May 2024, a judge ruled that only one piece of evidence, a duct tape fragment found on Lacy's pants, would undergo new DNA testing. In August 2024, 51-year-old Scott Peterson appeared in a 3-part Peacock documentary just a week after Netflix released theirs. From behind bars, he continues to insist he was wrongfully accused.
Yeah, there was a burglary across the street from my home, and I believe that Lacy went over there to see what was going on. That's where she was taken.
More than 20 years after Lacy and Connor's tragic deaths, Scott Peterson remains adamant about his innocence and relentlessly fighting for his freedom. Investigators insist his lies, infidelity, and odd behavior all point to guilt. But Scott's defense team argues that being a liar and a cad doesn't make him a murderer. After decades of legal battles, evolving theories, and new evidence, one question still looms over this case. What really happened to Laci Peterson that morning? Scott Peterson may be the only one who knows. Thanks for watching, and make sure to subscribe to The Vacant Mind.